Michael Forster shuddered as the morning waves washed over his bare feet. He stood on the deserted beach of Key Largo, as he did every morning for the past 3 months. The sun was just rising above the horizon, painting the water in a bright orange color. He sighed and looked at his hands, once the confident hands of a marine biologist, now the trembling hands of a man afraid to return to water deeper than knee level. Something caught his attention in the distance. A splash too big for a fish. Michael squinted, shielding his eyes from the sun. The splash repeated, this time closer to the shore. A gray back arched, and he instantly recognized its outline. A bottlenose dolphin. Strange time for feeding, he muttered to himself, stepping back onto dry sand. But as the dolphin approached the shore, Michael froze. The animal was swimming unnaturally, with obvious effort. Then he noticed it, a dark line trailing behind the dolphin in the water. Damn it, he exhaled, taking off his shirt. 5 years after the accident, after swearing never to enter deep water, Michael ran forward, diving into the waves. The dolphin didn't flee. When Michael reached it, paddling with his legs to stay afloat, he saw a fishing net tightly wrapped around the animal's tail fin. Blood was seeping from wounds where the net had cut into the skin. Easy, easy, Michael said, trying to hide the panic in his voice. His heart was pounding, not from the physical effort, but from the confined space, the feeling of helplessness. Memories of that night, the trap, darkness, screams, began to flood in. He forced himself to focus on the dolphin. It was a female, as he determined upon approaching. One sharp glance from blue-gray eyes, and Michael felt his panic receding. There was intelligence in those eyes. Hope. Trust. Let me help you, he whispered, slowly pulling out a pocket knife that he always carried with him from his days as a biologist. The water was shallow, the sandy bottom still under his feet, but it was enough to trigger anxiety. Michael clenched his teeth and worked methodically, cutting through the tangled net. The dolphin remained surprisingly calm, as if understanding what was happening. Only a few times did she flinch from pain when the net separated from the wounded skin. Almost done, muttered Michael, cutting off the last piece of synthetic fiber. Blood was still oozing, but the wounds didn't look dangerously deep. The freed dolphin moved, then stopped and turned back to him. She slowly swam in a circle around the man, as if thanking him, and then carefully swam into deeper waters. Michael climbed ashore, trembling not from cold, but from adrenaline. He stood, clutching the bloody fishing net in his hand, and watched as the dolphin disappeared into the open sea. For the first time in 5 years, he felt something other than fear and guilt. In the coastal cafe, the wave, the usual morning hustle and bustle prevailed. Michael entered, still wet after his unplanned swim. "Good Lord, Mike, you were swimming?" asked Louise, the owner of the establishment. She knew his story. The whole town knew. Dolphin got tangled in a net, he explained briefly, dropping the dirty net on the floor. Louise picked it up, examining it. This isn't an ordinary fishing net. It's a ghost net, as they call them, of a prohibited type. Are you sure? Michael took the net back, studying its structure more carefully. Absolutely. My husband was a fisherman for 30 years. These nets are banned because of their invisibility and long lifespan. Fish, dolphins, turtles, they don't see them until it's too late. Michael frowned. Someone is using them near the shore? So they say. In recent months, a new fishing company has appeared. Huge catches, incredibly fast. Some locals suspect foul play, but there's no evidence. The cafe door opened, and a slender woman with dark hair tied in a tight ponytail entered. Her T-shirt displayed the logo of the Marine Resource Protection Service. "Amanda," Louise nodded. "Coffee as usual?" "Please," the woman replied, then noticed the net in Michael's hands. Her eyes widened. "Where did you find this?" "Took it off a dolphin this morning," he answered. "Any idea who it might belong to?" Amanda took the net from his hands, her face darkening. "This is exactly what we're looking for. If you can tell me the exact place where you saw the dolphin, It would be very helpful. I can do better. I know where she swam off to. Amanda looked directly at him. You're Michael Forster? The former marine biologist from the Bay Research Center? Michael tensed. Used to be. I need your help. We need someone who knows these dolphins, local waters, and understands what's happening. Something has changed in the bay. Mass decline in fish populations, altered migration routes, increased disease among marine mammals. Michael shook his head. I'm not going back to sea. Not anymore. Amanda came closer. The dolphin you rescued. Can you describe it? Female bottlenose, approximately 8 feet, with a distinctive white scar near the dorsal fin. Pearl, Amanda exhaled. We've been tracking her for years. She's the smartest dolphin I've ever seen. And she chose you. What do you mean, chose me? Dolphins don't accidentally swim into shallow water. They rarely approach humans when injured. She could have swum to anyone, but she came to you. Michael met her gaze. That doesn't mean anything. Are you sure? She asked. Because tomorrow morning I'm going out to sea to find the source of these nets. And I need someone who knows these animals. From the cafe window, Michael could see the ocean, the shimmering blue infinity that had once been his home, then became his nightmare. And now somewhere out there, Pearl was swimming with her intelligent eyes and trust in him. The next morning, Michael stood on the pier, clutching a cup of coffee in his hand. Dawn was just beginning to break through the clouds, painting the sky with soft pink hues. He had arrived an hour earlier than the agreed time, more due to insomnia than determination. The 10 feet of water beneath him caused slight dizziness. Michael took a step back. For 5 years, he had lived in a coastal town, never boarding a boat, only occasionally wading into coastal waters up to his waist. Yesterday's impulse to save the dolphin was an exception, a moment when instinct overcame fear. Thought you wouldn't come, a voice sounded behind him. Michael turned around. Amanda stood with a small backpack over her shoulder, dressed in a protective wetsuit. I haven't decided yet, he answered honestly, sipping his coffee. But you're here, she noted, walking past him to a small research boat labeled Marine Guardian. Michael silently watched as she tossed her backpack on board and began checking the equipment. Her movements were skilled, economical, those of a person long accustomed to the sea. Do you know what exactly you're looking for? He finally asked, approaching the edge of the pier. Illegal nets. And those who set them, Amanda replied, checking the fuel tank. But honestly, I need your help with the dolphins. Pearl's behavior and that of other dolphins has changed over the past few months. They avoid certain parts of the bay that were previously their favorite places. You could take another biologist. I could. But none of them worked with this particular group of dolphins as long as you did. Michael sighed, looking at the water. His stomach clenched at the mere thought of boarding the boat, but the image of the wounded Pearl wouldn't leave him. I don't need to dive, right? He asked quietly. No, Amanda replied, and understanding flashed in her eyes. I'll handle all the dives. I just need your eyes, your experience. 20 minutes later, Marine Guardian was cutting through the waves, moving away from the shore. Michael sat at the stern, holding tightly to the railings, trying to focus on the horizon rather than the water beneath him. Strangely, the boat's motion was almost soothing, a sensation he had long forgotten. So, what happened? Amanda suddenly asked, reducing speed as they reached open water. I've heard different stories. Michael tensed. Shipwreck. 5 years ago. I know that. I mean, what happened to you? He turned away, looking at the waves. Research vessel. Storm caught us by surprise. I was underwater with 3 students when a lightning strike damaged our main boat. His voice grew quieter. We surfaced, but the vessel was already on fire. The waves were so high. I lost 2 students that night. Amanda remained silent, giving him time. I was their supervisor. I made the decision to continue the research despite the storm warning. He gripped the railings tighter. After that, I just couldn't go into the water anymore. I'm sorry, she said simply. Michael nodded, feeling a strange relief from saying it aloud. Suddenly, something splashed near the boat. Michael instinctively turned and saw a familiar fin. "Pearl," he exhaled. The dolphin circled around the boat, occasionally jumping high enough for them to see her white scar. The wounds from the net had already begun to heal. "Incredible," whispered Amanda. "She's following you." "Or the boat." "No, following you. Look, she's staying on your side of the boat." Michael leaned over the side, and Pearl surfaced again, her eye attentively watching him. Something old stirred in his chest, a fascination he hadn't felt in years. "She might lead us," suggested Amanda. "Show us, Pearl, what's happening in your home." As if understanding, the dolphin turned and swam north. Amanda directed the boat after her, keeping at a safe distance. They passed several small islands and entered a more open part of the bay. Michael noticed a large industrial ship in the distance. "Is that Ocean Harvest?" he asked, pointing to the vessel. Amanda nodded, her face darkening. "New company. Appeared about 8 months ago. They go out early in the morning. Return with huge catches. We've tried to inspect them several times, but everything looks legal, at least at first glance. But you suspect. This bay can't produce such large catches with legal methods. Not daily." Pearl suddenly dove deeper, and Michael lost sight of her. A few seconds later, she appeared further away, insistently moving in a specific direction. "She's showing us something," said Michael, feeling scientific interest awakening within him. "They might be much smarter than we think." Amanda reduced speed as they approached a small bay hidden behind a rocky outcrop. Pearl stopped at the edge of the bay, as if waiting for them. "I'll check," said Amanda, preparing her mask and fins. "Wait," Michael stopped her, peering intently into the water. Something was wrong with the color, a barely noticeable difference in shade that only an experienced marine biologist could spot. "There's something under the surface." Amanda took binoculars and directed them at the water. "I don't see anything." "Trust me," insisted Michael. "Let's approach closer, but carefully." As they neared the bay, Michael noticed thin buoys, almost invisible on the surface. "There it is. Nets." "I'm diving," Amanda said resolutely, putting on her mask. "Wait," Michael stopped her again. "Let's first take photos from the surface. We need evidence that the nets are placed right here." They began documenting GPS coordinates, photos of buoys, time of day. Michael suddenly felt like a scientist again, methodical, attentive to details. Suddenly, a loud engine sound broke the silence. From behind the rocky outcrop, a speedboat with the Ocean Harvest logo appeared. "They've spotted us," Amanda said tensely. "And they don't look happy." "We need to get out of here," replied Michael, feeling his heart start to pound. Quickly, Amanda started the engine, but the Ocean Harvest boat was more powerful and rapidly closing the distance. "What are you doing in our private bay?" shouted a bearded man from the approaching boat when they got closer. "These are public waters," Amanda replied, showing her Marine Resource Protection Service ID. "We're conducting a routine survey." The man didn't look convinced. His boat blocked their path to open water. "You'd better get out of here. This is our fishing territory." "Your illegal fishing territory," Michael couldn't restrain himself, pointing at the buoys. "These nets are prohibited." The man's expression became threatening. On board his boat, Michael noticed 2 more workers looking at them with equally hostile gazes. "You don't know who you're messing with," growled the bearded man. Michael felt fear rising inside him, not just because of the threat, but from the realization that they were trapped on the water, far from shore. The familiar horror began to engulf him, and just at that moment, Pearl leaped out of the water, flying over the bow of the Ocean Harvest boat and splashing loudly back down. 2 more dolphins surfaced behind her, creating a real water spectacle. Faced with this incredible interruption, the bearded man was momentarily confused, and Amanda seized the opportunity, sharply turning the Marine Guardian and accelerating past the disoriented fisherman. "This isn't over," the man shouted after them, but they were already moving away, with the dolphins swimming alongside, as if escorting them. Did you see that? Amanda exhaled when they were at a safe distance. They helped us. Michael couldn't take his eyes off Pearl, who gracefully swam beside the boat. Yes, he quietly replied. They helped, but now we know who we're dealing with. And they know too. Is that all you have? Photos of buoys and your suspicions. The director of the Regional Marine Resource Protection Service Office, Karen Martinez, reviewed the materials on her desk with evident skepticism. Amanda, we cannot obtain a search warrant based on dolphins jumping. Amanda glanced at Michael, who sat nearby, intensely studying his hands. They had spent the morning in the office, trying to convince management of the need for an official investigation into the activities of Ocean Harvest. We have sufficient grounds to at least start an investigation, insisted Amanda. Illegal nets, sharp decline in fish population, aggressive behavior of their employees. Not enough. Martinez cut her off, closing the folder with documents. The company has powerful friends in the local administration. They've created almost 100 jobs in the past year. We need irrefutable evidence of violations before we can do anything. Michael finally looked up. What about water samples? I can analyze them for toxins, microplastics, and other pollutants. If they're using prohibited nets, who knows what else they're violating? Martinez looked somewhat interested. You're Forster, right? The one from the Marine Research Institute. Former, he replied briefly. Your reputation still carries weight. If you personally conduct the analysis and find something specific, that could give us the necessary grounds. She sighed. But officially, I can't give you permission to collect samples in that bay. Not after yesterday's incident. So what? Just allow them to continue? Amanda asked angrily. I didn't say that. Martinez lowered her voice. Listen, Collins won't leave us alone until he gets what he wants, complete control over the bay's fishing grounds. He has money and connections. We need to act smartly. Collins, Michael asked. Ridgway Collins, the owner of Ocean Harvest, explained Amanda. A millionaire who decided to enter the fishing business 2 years ago, without any experience in the industry. Interesting, Michael murmured. When they left the office, the midday sun mercilessly blazed. Michael felt the familiar frustration with bureaucratic obstacles. This was one of the reasons why he had always preferred working at sea rather than in an office. So what now? He asked as they walked to the parking lot. I'm not giving up, Amanda replied resolutely. If we need water samples, we'll get them. If we need photos of nets underwater, we'll take them, Martinez said. She said she can't give us official permission. She didn't forbid us from acting privately. There was a spark of determination in Amanda's eyes. Listen, I understand if you don't want to continue. It could be dangerous, especially after yesterday. Michael thought for a moment. Yesterday, on the boat, he had felt something he hadn't felt in years: purpose, adrenaline, a connection to the sea. And there was also Pearl, who had trusted him, who had led them to those nets. I'm with you, he finally said. But we need a plan. The Wave Café was almost empty late in the afternoon. Michael and Amanda sat in the far corner, leaning over a map of the bay. Here's where we found the nets. Amanda marked the spot with a red marker. And here's where their ship was stationed in the morning. They probably go out at dawn and check the nets, reasoned Michael. If we want to gather evidence, we need to be there before them. And how do we do that? They'll probably be watching our boat after yesterday. We need a different boat. Michael thoughtfully tapped his fingers on the table. And, possibly, some help. Louise approached their table with coffee. Look serious, she remarked, looking at the map. We're trying to prove that Ocean Harvest is using illegal fishing methods, explained Amanda. Huh. I could have told you that without an investigation, Louise snorted. My nephew Jason worked there for a month. Quit when he realized what they were doing. Michael and Amanda exchanged glances. Can we talk to him? Michael asked. Sure. He's working at the docks now, repairing boats. Smart kid. just a bit impatient. An hour later, they sat at the edge of the pier, listening to Jason, a thin guy in his 20s with tattoos of marine animals on both arms. They leave at 4 in the morning, he explained, taking a drag on his cigarette. Check the nets, collect the catch, return by 9. But that's not all. Collins isn't just fishing. It's a cover. A cover for what? Amanda tensed. Not sure. But a few times a week, late at night, another vessel comes. Bigger, with foreign markings. They meet far from shore. Smuggling, Michael suggested. Jason shrugged. Maybe. Once I accidentally ended up on the lower deck of their vessel. There were boxes with strange markings. When they spotted me, there was a lot of shouting and threats. Do you know when the next meeting with the foreign vessel is scheduled? Asked Amanda. Tonight, Jason replied. Heard them talking about it. Something about a big cargo. They talked for another half hour, learning all possible details. Jason also agreed to lend them his small fishing boat. Nobody will pay attention to an old wreck, as he put it. When they returned to the cafe, the sun was already setting, coloring the water in golden red hues. This is bigger than just illegal fishing, Amanda said thoughtfully. If they're really involved in smuggling, then that explains why they so aggressively protect their territory, Michael finished. And why they need such a large profit from fishing as a cover. Are you really ready for this? Amanda asked, looking at him intently. It could be dangerous. Michael turned to the window, looking at the ocean. Somewhere out there was Pearl and her family, and their habitat was under threat. Despite his fear of deep water, he felt he couldn't just turn away. I'm ready, he answered. But first we need to prepare. At midnight, moonlight painted a silver path on the black water surface. Michael sat in Jason's old fishing boat, feeling nausea approaching, not only from rocking on the waves, but also from tension. He and Amanda were in a small cove north of the main bay, from where, according to Jason, they could clearly see the meeting place of the smugglers. How are you? Amanda quietly asked, passing him a thermos of coffee. Been better. Michael tried to smile, but the smile came out tense. Strange to return to the sea at night, especially after. He didn't finish the sentence. There was no need. The darkness, the water, the feeling of vulnerability, all this reminded him too much of that fatal night 5 years ago. We don't have to do this, Amanda said gently. We can go back and try to find another way. Michael shook his head, gripping the thermos tighter. No, we're already here, and this might be our only chance to understand what's happening. He looked at his watch, midnight. According to Jason, the foreign vessel was supposed to appear around 1 o'clock. Amanda raised her binoculars, peering into the darkness. Lights, she suddenly whispered. On the horizon. Michael also looked in that direction, noticing a faint glow in the distance. Gradually, it transformed into clearly defined lights of a large vessel. That doesn't look like a fishing trawler, he murmured. More like a cargo ship. They watched as the ship slowly approached and anchored several kilometers from shore. 20 minutes later, lights from a smaller vessel appeared from the direction of the pier, the Ocean Harvest boat. They're meeting, whispered Amanda, setting up a camera with a powerful lens, capturing every movement. Michael took night vision binoculars, which they had borrowed from a local bird-watching club. The green glow allowed him to see silhouettes of people on the deck of Ocean Harvest. They approached right up to the larger ship, and now a bridge was extended between the vessels. There's Collins, Michael said tensely, recognizing the tall figure of the company owner. And 4 more. No, 5 men. Amanda continued photographing, each clicking sound of the camera shutter seeming unnaturally loud in the night silence. They're passing something. Boxes, Michael continued commenting. From the large vessel to Ocean Harvest. Can you make out any markings? Whispered Amanda. No, too dark and far away. But the boxes are small. Doesn't look like ordinary imported goods. They observed the process for about 40 minutes. When the cargo transfer was complete, both vessels began preparing to depart. "We should see where they're heading," Amanda said decisively, putting the camera in a waterproof case. "You want to follow them?" Michael felt his heart beginning to beat faster. "On this boat? They'll notice us." "Not necessarily. We stay at a distance without lights. This is our chance to find out where they store the cargo." Michael hesitated. One thing was to observe from a safe distance, and quite another to actively pursue potential criminals in the open sea in the middle of the night. "All right," he finally said, "but we keep at maximum distance and turn back at the slightest suspicion that we've been spotted." Amanda nodded, and they carefully started the boat's engine, setting it to the quietest mode. Without lights, only under the moonlight, they began moving in the direction of Ocean Harvest, which had just departed from the large ship and was returning to shore. They kept far behind, far enough that the light from the fishing vessel was just a small dot on the dark water. Michael felt sweat running down his back, despite the coolness of the night air. "They're turning," whispered Amanda after 20 minutes, "but not toward the main port." Indeed, Ocean Harvest had deviated from its usual route and was heading towards a less used part of the coast. Michael recalled the map of the area. There was a small private dock there, which, he thought, had long been in use. "I think they're heading to Johnson's old dock," he said. "It's a perfect place for secret unloading. Isolated, with direct access to the main road." They followed cautiously, keeping close to the shoreline, where shadows from the coastal rocks helped them remain undetected. Finally, Ocean Harvest slowly entered a small bay with a half-ruined dock. Michael and Amanda stopped the boat behind a rocky outcrop, from where they could observe while remaining hidden. "There's a truck," Amanda noticed, pointing to the shore, where a large van without identifying markings stood by the dock. They watched as the Ocean Harvest crew quickly and methodically transferred the mysterious boxes from the ship to the truck. All movements were practiced, indicating that this was not their first such operation. "We need to get closer," whispered Amanda. "From this distance, the photos won't be clear enough for identification." Michael hesitated. "It's risky." "I have an idea." Amanda took out a small waterproof drone with a camera from her backpack. "This is my personal one. I use it to observe dolphins from a distance. We can launch it along the water. It's almost silent." She quickly set up the drone and launched it, controlling it through a small tablet screen. The tiny device flew low over the water, approaching the dock. "It's working," she whispered. "I can see the markings." "Oh God, what's there?" Michael leaned over to look at the screen. "Not sure, but it looks like." "Do you know anything about exotic animals?" Michael peered at the image. On the boxes were symbols that he recognized as warnings about live cargo. Some of the containers had ventilation holes. "Smuggling of rare species," he exhaled. "The black market for exotic animals is a multi-billion-dollar business." At that moment, the drone captured how one of the boxes was accidentally dropped, and it partially opened. A brightly colored snake slipped out, causing a commotion among the workers. "They're using the fishing business as a cover," said Amanda. "Illegal fishing, smuggling of exotic species, it's all connected." Suddenly, their boat slightly shuddered. Something hit the hull from below. "What was that?" Michael tensed. And then, as if in response, a familiar figure appeared next to the boat. Pearl, her dorsal fin clearly visible in the moonlight. "Incredible," whispered Michael. "How did she find us?" The dolphin slowly circled around the boat, sometimes approaching so close that they could see her eyes in the darkness. "She's trying to tell us something," Amanda quietly suggested. "They're very sensitive to changes in their environment. Maybe she senses danger." At that moment, the drone recorded as the last boxes were loaded into the truck, and it began to drive away from the dock. "We've got enough evidence," said Michael. "We need to go back and show all this to Martinez." Amanda nodded and called the drone back. But as the small device was returning to them, it suddenly began to descend, as if losing power. "No, no, no," Amanda panicked, trying to correct the course. The battery shouldn't have discharged so quickly. The drone fell into the water approximately 50 meters from their boat. Damn, she exhaled. All our evidence. Not all. Michael pointed to the camera. You still have photos of the vessels, the meeting place. And he pointed to his phone. I was recording video from the tablet screen while you were controlling the drone. Pearl appeared beside the boat again, this time emitting a series of clicking sounds. She's agitated, said Michael, who had once studied dolphin vocalization. Something's wrong. And then they heard the sound of a powerful engine approaching from the direction of the dock. Turning, they saw that Ocean Harvest had departed and was turning in their direction. We've been spotted, Michael whispered, feeling panic tightening his throat. We have to flee. Amanda started the engine. But at that moment, Pearl slapped the water with her tail with such force that they were both splashed. Then she turned and swam not towards the open sea, but along the shore, in the direction of a shallow lagoon that Michael knew from his research days. Follow her, Michael suddenly said, taking control of the boat. Trust me. He directed the boat towards the lagoon, hoping he remembered the correct path through the shallows. Ocean Harvest was larger and wouldn't be able to pass through the narrow passage between the rocks. They moved after Pearl, who confidently led them in the darkness. Several times their boat slightly grazed the bottom, but continued moving. The sound of pursuit became more distant until it disappeared completely. When they finally entered a small protected lagoon, the moonlight created an almost magical atmosphere. Pearl was still with them, swimming in circles in the calm water. She saved us, breathed Amanda. Incredible. Michael looked at the dolphin with a mixture of wonder and gratitude. Yes, I knew they were intelligent, but this is something else. They decided to stay in the lagoon until dawn. It would be too risky to try to return at night, especially if Colin's people were still looking for them. They sat in silence, occasionally talking in quiet voices. Pearl remained nearby, as if standing guard. You know, Michael said quietly, looking at the starry sky, I've been afraid to return to the sea for 5 years. And now, thanks to this dolphin, I feel for the first time that I can overcome it. Amanda silently placed her hand on his shoulder. They remained like that, waiting for dawn and thinking about what would come next. Dawn greeted them in a peaceful lagoon. The water changed color from deep black to gentle pink, reflecting the morning sky. Michael woke up first, numb from sleeping in an uncomfortable position on the small boat. Amanda was asleep, curled up in the bow of the boat, her camera still pressed firmly against her chest. Pearl hadn't disappeared. The dolphin swam nearby, occasionally surfacing and making quiet whistling sounds. Seeing that Michael had awakened, she swam closer. Good morning, Savior, he said quietly, touching the water with his fingertips. Pearl swam even closer, allowing him to lightly touch her dorsal fin. It was a moment of trust that Michael hadn't felt with any wild creature for a very long time. She's still here, came Amanda's sleepy voice as she woke up and sat up, stretching. Yes, Michael replied, not taking his eyes off the dolphin. I think she was waiting for us. Amanda took out a water bottle, drank half eagerly, and handed the other half to Michael. We need to head back, she said, checking her camera. If we make it before the office opens, we can show Martinez what we recorded. Michael nodded, surveying the lagoon. This exit leads to the northern part of the bay, he said, pointing to a narrow passage between the rocks. If we go this way, we'll avoid the part of the shore where Johnson's dock is located. They started the engine and slowly moved toward the exit from the lagoon. Pearl accompanied them, swimming a little ahead, as if indicating the safest path. When they reached open water, the sun had already fully risen above the horizon. Michael felt a strange sense of calm for the first time in years. He had spent a night at sea and wasn't paralyzed by fear. Something had changed. Perhaps it was Pearl's presence, or the sense of purpose and importance of their mission, or a combination of both factors. They returned the boat to Jason, who was anxiously waiting for them at the docks. "God, are you okay?" he asked, noticing their tired appearance. "I was starting to worry." "Everything's fine," Amanda replied. "And we have evidence." They briefly told him about their discoveries, promising more details later, and hurried to the Protection Service office. Martinez was already there, sorting through the morning mail. She raised her eyebrows when she saw them, tired, with bags under their eyes, but with obvious determination. "Something tells me you didn't follow my advice," she said, pointing them to chairs in front of her desk. "You need to see this," Amanda said, taking out her camera and connecting it to Martinez's computer. They showed her the photos of the ship's meeting at sea, and then the video that Michael had taken from the tablet screen while controlling the drone, images of boxes marked for live cargo, the moment when a container was dropped and an exotic snake slipped out of it. "My God," whispered Martinez, peering at the images. "Collins isn't just violating fishing regulations. This is an international crime. They're using fishing as a cover," Michael explained. "Prohibited nets allow them to quickly catch large quantities of fish to maintain the appearance of a successful company, while their real business is smuggling rare species. And in that case," Amanda added, "they need control over the bay so no one notices their night operations or prohibited nets." Martinez turned to her computer and began typing an email quickly. "I'm immediately contacting the federal agency and Coast Guard. This is no longer our jurisdiction. We're talking about international smuggling. How long will it take to organize an operation?" Michael asked. "A few days, maybe a week. We'll have to act carefully. Collins has connections." Michael and Amanda exchanged glances. "We may not have a week," Amanda said. "The boxes we saw contained live animals. Some of them may not survive in such conditions." Martinez sighed. "I understand your concern, but we have to follow protocol. An investigation of this scale requires careful preparation." She paused for a moment, then added more quietly, "Listen, you two have done your part, and very well. Now let the system work. Go home, rest, and, for God's sake, stay away from Collins and his people." Leaving the office, they crossed a small square and entered the Wave for a late breakfast. "A week," Michael muttered, looking into his coffee. "In a week, they could make another delivery, or relocate their operation, if they suspect they were being watched." "They have no reason to suspect," Amanda gently objected. "They didn't catch us last night. They didn't see our faces. But they saw the boat. They might have noticed it wasn't a regular fishing vessel." Louisa brought them plates with eggs and toast. "You two look like you haven't slept all night," she remarked. "That's right," Amanda smiled tiredly. Louisa sat down with them, lowering her voice. "Jason told me what you found. Animal smuggling, right? I always knew something was off about Collins, who suddenly becomes a fisherman without knowing the difference between a perch and a cod." "We can't discuss details," Amanda replied cautiously. "But yes, we found something serious." "And now what?" "Now we wait until federal agencies organize an operation," said Michael. Louisa snorted. "Bureaucracy. By the time they sort out the paperwork, Collins could escape with all his dirty money." Michael felt she was right, but what could they do? Martinez was right about protocol and jurisdiction. Suddenly, the coffee shop door opened, and two men entered. Michael tensed, recognizing one of them, the bearded man from the Sea Harvest boat who had threatened them the day before. "Sorry, ladies, we're closed for a break," Louisa quickly said, standing up. "We're not here for coffee," replied the bearded man, slowly scanning the room. His gaze stopped on Michael and Amanda. "Looking for new employees for our company. Heard you can find people here who know the sea." Michael felt his heart accelerate. The man showed no sign of recognizing them, but something in his tone and the slow examination of the premises raised alarm. "I'm afraid you won't find workers here," Louisa replied, standing between the men and the table where Michael and Amanda sat. We mostly have tourists and retirees here." The bearded man smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Oh, I don't know. I'd say there are interesting people here." He turned to his companion. "Let's go, Mark. Let's try looking at the docks." When they left, Amanda exhaled. "Did he recognize us?" "I don't think so," Michael replied, but without confidence. "Maybe they're just checking." "I don't like this," said Louisa, returning to the counter. "They've never come here before. Suddenly they start looking for employees right here, right today?" Michael and Amanda exchanged glances. "We'd better go," he said, pulling out his wallet to pay. "Don't bother," Louisa stopped him. "Just be careful and keep me informed. This bay is our home, and we won't let the likes of Collins destroy it." They decided to go to Amanda's place, whose small house was located on the outskirts of town, away from the pier and the Sea Harvest office. "You can stay here," she offered, opening the door to a modest but cozy home. "At least until this is all over." Michael thanked her, too tired to argue. He didn't even have the strength for a shower. He just collapsed on the couch in the living room and immediately fell asleep. He woke up late in the evening to the smell of coffee and food. Amanda was standing in the small kitchen, cooking pasta. "How long did I sleep?" he asked, stretching. "Almost 8 hours," she replied, stirring the sauce. "You needed it." After dinner, they sat on the back porch of the house. From here, there was a view of the bay, which in the twilight seemed calm and carefree. Somewhere out there were dolphins, fish, all the marine life that was threatened by Collins's activities. "How did you get into marine environmental protection?" Michael asked, sipping his tea. Amanda smiled. "I grew up by the ocean in Oregon. My father was a fisherman, but he always respected the sea. He taught me that we only take what we need and always care about the future." She looked at him. "And you?" "I read some of your work in university. Your research on dolphin communication was groundbreaking." Michael shrugged. "I just always felt a connection with the ocean. More than with people, honestly. Animals never lie, exploit, or destroy without need." Amanda nodded, understanding. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. "I think," Michael finally said, "that I can't just sit and wait a week." "What do you suggest?" "We know where they store the contraband cargo, at least temporarily. Old Johnson's dock. There must be some storage facilities. If we could get more direct evidence." "It's dangerous," Amanda objected. "If they really suspect something, they might be watching us." "Then we have to be smarter than them," Michael replied. "I once knew every inch of this bay. There are ways to get to the old dock unnoticed." Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by the sound of Amanda's phone. She looked at the screen and raised an eyebrow. "It's Jason," she said, answering the call. "Hello." Her face tensed as she listened. "When? Are you sure?" "Okay. Thanks for the information. Be careful." She hung up and turned to Michael, her eyes wide with excitement. "What happened?" he asked. "Jason is working the night shift at the docks today. He just saw Collins's people loading things onto the Sea Harvest. A lot of things, as if they're preparing to sail." "They're running," Michael said. "Something must have spooked them." "Us," Amanda said quietly. "That man in the coffee shop. He recognized us." Michael stood up. "Then we have to act now. If they go to sea with the evidence." "I'll call Martinez." Amanda took the phone again. But when she dialed the number, only voicemail answered. She left an urgent message, but they both understood. Waiting for an official response might be too late. "Well," said Michael, looking at the bay where the lights of the Sea Harvest were barely visible in the darkness, "it seems we have to act on our own." "Do we have a plan?" Amanda asked, understanding that dissuading him was pointless. "Yes," Michael nodded, feeling the adrenaline beginning to flow through his veins. "And it includes our dolphin friend." The night water glistened under the gliding moonbeams. Michael stood on a small pier in the southern part of the bay, where he and Amanda had arrived via back roads. avoiding main roads and places where Collins's people might spot them. Jason was with them, having insisted on participating in the operation. "The Sea Harvest is still at the main pier," said Jason, looking through binoculars. "But they've almost finished loading. I'd say we have half an hour, maximum an hour, before they set sail." Amanda was checking the equipment piled in a small rubber boat: waterproof flashlights, a camera, a portable GPS tracker they planned to attach to the suspicious cargo, and even a small drone for aerial surveillance, which she had borrowed from a colleague. "The plan still seems crazy," Jason muttered. "Are you sure about this dolphin?" Michael glanced at the water, where a characteristic fin occasionally appeared. Pearl had found them almost as soon as they reached the water, as if she sensed their presence. "She hasn't abandoned us so far," he replied. "Dolphins are much smarter than most people think, and this one especially." He pulled a small acoustic device from his pocket, an old tool from his research days that generated special sound signals attractive to dolphins. After checking the battery, he carefully lowered the device into the water and activated it. Pearl appeared almost instantly nearby, her head emerging from the water, assessing the situation. Michael crouched at the edge of the pier. "Hello, girl," he said quietly. "Need your help again." He placed his palm on the water's surface, and the dolphin swam close enough to touch it. It was a moment that Michael couldn't fully explain scientifically, this level of understanding and trust between different species. "I hope your plan works," said Amanda, lowering the rubber boat into the water. "Otherwise, we risk not just our reputation." The plan was risky but simple. They knew that the Sea Harvest was about to leave port, probably with contraband animals on board. Their goal was to track the ship at a safe distance, record exactly where it was heading with the cargo, and if possible, attach a GPS tracker to the vessel's hull. And here, a special role was assigned to Pearl. Michael hoped that the Dolphin would serve as their guide again, helping them to inconspicuously follow the fishing vessel as had happened the last time. "This is our only chance to gather irrefutable evidence," Michael replied. "If we wait for an official investigation, Collins will just cover his tracks." Jason nodded, helping to finish the preparations. "Are you sure you want me to stay here?" "Yes," Amanda said firmly. "We need someone on shore who knows where we are and what's happening, if we don't return by dawn." "Understood," Jason replied grimly. "Then contact me every half hour via radio. And don't do anything heroic." Agreed. Michael checked the radio transmitter securely attached to his belt and climbed into the boat. Amanda joined him, and they quietly pushed off from the pier. They moved almost silently along the shoreline, staying in the shadow of trees and rocks. Pearl swam alongside, sometimes disappearing underwater, but always returning. "I still can't believe it," Amanda said quietly, watching the dolphin. "In all my years of observation, I've never seen such behavior." "Maybe she senses our purpose," Michael replied. "Or maybe she just likes us." As they approached the main pier, they turned off the engine and continued on oars. In the darkness, they could see the Sea Harvest figures moving on its deck, preparing the vessel for departure. "We need to get closer," Amanda whispered, but not so close that we're noticed. A few minutes later, the Sea Harvest departed from the pier, slowly turning toward the open sea. "Now," said Michael, turning on the engine at its lowest power. They began following the fishing vessel, keeping a safe distance. Pearl seemed to understand the situation. She swam in front of them, as if indicating the optimal path, close enough not to lose sight of the Sea Harvest, but far enough to remain undetected. After 20 minutes, it became clear that the ship wasn't heading to the usual fishing zones. It was moving along the coast to the south, toward the open ocean. "They might be heading to international waters," Amanda suggested, looking at the compass. "If they go beyond the 12-mile territorial limit, then they'll be outside U.S. jurisdiction," Michael finished. "At least to some extent." He thought about the GPS tracker they planned to attach. If the vessel was indeed heading into international waters, this evidence could be crucial. "We need to get closer," he said. "I need to attach the tracker." "It's risky," Amanda replied. "Judging from last time, they may have lookouts." "There's no other way," Michael said firmly. "If we lose them in the open sea, everything will have been for nothing." He increased the speed slightly, reducing the distance to the sea harvest. Their small boat was almost invisible in the darkness, especially without lights on. When they got to within about 100 meters, Michael stopped the engine and carefully took a waterproof suit from his bag. "I'll swim underwater," he said, starting to dress. "I'll attach the tracker to the hull below the waterline." Amanda helped him secure a small oxygen tank to his back. "Are you sure?" After everything that happened, Michael looked at the water. Strangely, the fear that had haunted him for 5 years had receded. Perhaps it was due to the adrenaline, or the sense of purpose, or Pearl's presence circling nearby. "I'm sure," he replied. "Just be ready to sail away quickly if something goes wrong." He checked the GPS tracker, a small black device with a magnetic mount, secured it to his belt, and pulled on his mask. Before diving, he quietly called Pearl. The dolphin swam closer, and Michael carefully said, "Are you with me, girl?" In response, Pearl released a stream of air from her blowhole and dove underwater. Michael smiled, inserted the regulator into his mouth, and followed her. The dark water enveloped him. For a moment, the old panic tried to surface in his consciousness, but he focused on the mission and swam forward, orienting himself to the silhouette of the vessel ahead and occasionally noticing Pearl circling nearby. He approached the sea harvest from the stern, where the engines created enough noise to mask any sounds of his presence. When he reached the hull, he carefully began looking for a suitable place for the tracker. It needed to be underwater, but not so deep that the signal couldn't penetrate. Finding the ideal position, he firmly attached the tracker to the metal surface of the hull. The signal indicator flashed green. The device was working. Michael began to swim away, but suddenly his attention was drawn to something unusual, a small hatch near the waterline, slightly open, from which a dim beam of light was streaming. This was atypical for a fishing vessel. Despite all his instincts for self-preservation, he swam closer and peered inside. What he saw made his heart skip a beat: rows of cages with animals. He recognized several rare species of reptiles, birds, and even small primates. Most of them looked weakened or sick. Michael took out the waterproof camera that Amanda had insisted he take and took several photos through the gap. This was direct, irrefutable evidence of endangered species smuggling. After finishing photographing, he began swimming back to their boat. But when he moved a few meters away from the hull, something large and dark passed by him. At first, he thought it was Pearl, but the shape was different. A shark. A sizable specimen, over 3 meters long, and it was slowly circling around him, obviously interested in the new object in its territory. Michael froze, remembering his training. Sudden movements could provoke the predator. He slowly began swimming away in the direction of their boat, keeping the shark in his field of vision. Suddenly, Pearl emerged from the darkness, moving with incredible speed. She swam between Michael and the shark, emitting a series of loud clicks. Then she was joined by 2 more dolphins, whom Michael hadn't seen before. He knew about cases where dolphins protected humans from sharks, but never thought he would witness such an event himself. 3 dolphins circled around the shark, creating a living barrier between it and Michael. Taking advantage of the moment, he quickly swam to the boat, feeling the low oxygen level in his tank beginning to make itself known. When he finally surfaced near their boat, Amanda helped him climb aboard. "God, Michael, are you okay?" I was starting to worry. "Yes," he exhaled, removing his mask. "The tracker is installed. And more than that, they have plenty of animals there. I took photos." He briefly told her about his encounter with the shark and Pearl's intervention, along with her companions. "Incredible," whispered Amanda as Pearl surfaced near the boat, making joyful sounds. "She really was protecting you." I wouldn't have survived without her, Michael replied, feeling a deep gratitude toward the animal. Now we need to track where the vessel is going and call for backup. They started the engine again and continued following the sea harvest, keeping a safe distance. Thanks to the GPS tracker, they didn't need to be too close. Amanda contacted Jason via radio, informing him of their success and current location. I contacted Martinez, he replied. She's getting in touch with the Coast Guard. They've already sent a boat. Tell them to hurry, said Amanda. The vessel is approaching the limit of territorial waters. For the next hour, they continued following the sea harvest, watching as it moved away from the shore. Pearl and the other dolphins accompanied them, as if understanding the importance of the mission. Finally, lights appeared on the horizon, first small, then brighter. It was the Coast Guard vessel, moving at full speed. They made it. Amanda exhaled with relief. They watched as the Coast Guard vessel approached the sea harvest, forcing it to stop. Even from a distance, they could see armed officers boarding the vessel. We did it, Michael said quietly, feeling a strange mixture of fatigue and triumph. 3 days later, Michael sat on the beach, watching the sunset. The Coast Guard operation had been a complete success. Over 200 specimens of rare species, most of which were listed in the Red Book, were found aboard the Sea Harvest. Collins and his accomplices were arrested on charges of smuggling, animal cruelty, and violations of multiple environmental laws. Michael's photographs and Amanda's testimony became key evidence in the case. The rescued animals were transferred to specialized rehabilitation centers where they received proper care. I'm thinking of coming back, said Michael, when Amanda approached and sat next to him on the sand. Coming back where? She asked. To research. To the ocean, he replied, looking at the water where Pearl's fin was visible not far from shore. I spent 5 years hiding from my fears. Maybe it's time to face them again. Amanda smiled. The Marine Research Department would be happy to have you back. They never found a worthy replacement. Maybe I'll focus on new research, Michael said thoughtfully. The connection between humans and dolphins. How they can understand us, and we them. He extended his hand toward the water. As if on cue, Pearl swam closer to shore. She looked at him with her intelligent eyes, and Michael felt as if she truly understood what he was talking about. I can never thank her enough, he said. She not only saved my life, she helped me get it back. Perhaps she feels the same way about you, Amanda replied. You saved her from the net, and then helped protect her home from Collins. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching as Pearl playfully jumped in the water. Other dolphins from her group joined her, creating a wonderful water show. You know, Amanda finally said, the Protection Service is considering creating a new department specifically for the protection of marine mammals in this region. They need someone who understands these animals. Michael turned to her with a raised eyebrow. You're not offering me a job, are you? Maybe, she smiled. We could work together. Your scientific knowledge, my conservation experience, and, of course, our dolphin liaison. Michael laughed, a real, genuine laugh, for the first time in many years. I think we'd make a good team. Pearl made a series of clicking sounds, as if agreeing. I knew she would approve, Amanda laughed. The sun had almost completely disappeared below the horizon, coloring the water in rich golden pink hues. Michael felt that something inside him had changed over these few days. The old scars hadn't completely disappeared, but they no longer held him captive. You know what's strangest? He said, looking at the ocean. When I was underwater that night, with the shark and Pearl, I didn't feel fear. I felt at home. Amanda silently took his hand. On the horizon, the silhouettes of dolphins jumped in the last rays of the sun, free and wild, yet somehow connected to humans by bonds that couldn't be explained by science alone. The sea sometimes takes away, Michael said quietly, but it also gives back. And with these words, he stood up, took off his shirt, and entered the water, not just knee-deep, as before, but completely without hesitation. He swam toward Pearl, who was waiting for him in the middle of the bay, ready to become a guardian of the ocean once more. 6 months later, the bay glistened in the rays of the spring sun. Michael stood on a research boat, adjusting underwater audio equipment. At the stern, Amanda and 2 student interns were preparing recording equipment and cameras. "The system is ready," Michael announced, checking the final connections. "We should get great recordings today." Since the day Collins and his accomplices were arrested, much had changed. Michael had officially returned to marine research, becoming the head of a new dolphin study program sponsored by the Marine Resource Protection Service and the local university. Amanda led the newly created Department of Marine Mammal Monitoring and Conservation, which was based directly in the bay. Their project, which studied dolphin communication and intelligence, had attracted the attention of the scientific community, especially after the publication of preliminary data on the unusual group of dolphins in the bay, among which Pearl was particularly notable. "Radar is detecting an approaching group," announced Jenny, one of the students, pointing to the device screen. "Approximately 8 individuals. Most likely Pearl and her family," Michael replied, feeling the familiar excitement. With each encounter, they learned something new about these amazing creatures. At a signal, Amanda lowered the hydrophones into the water, and Michael turned on the acoustic device that generated specific sounds, a kind of greeting they had developed over months of observation. "I hope our experiment will be successful today," said Amanda, adjusting the recording equipment. "No one has ever tried to do something like this before." The experiment was the culmination of their 6-month work, an attempt to establish more complex communication with dolphins using a specially developed system of sounds and visual signals. They believed that Pearl and her group were intelligent enough to learn to associate certain sounds with specific objects or actions. The first dolphins appeared within minutes, initially just fins in the distance, then they approached the boat. Michael immediately recognized Pearl by the characteristic white scar near her dorsal fin, which over the months had almost completely healed, leaving only a light stripe. "Hello, old friend," he said quietly, watching as the dolphin gracefully circled around the boat. According to the experiment protocol, they began playing a sequence of sounds that Pearl already associated with a specific object, a small yellow ball. Simultaneously, Michael held the ball above the water so the dolphins could see it. Pearl's reaction was almost instantaneous. She approached the boat, produced a series of clicking sounds very similar to those used in the signal, and then swam a few meters away and began making circles in the water, as if inviting them to throw the ball. "Incredible," whispered Amanda, observing the reaction. She didn't just recognize the signal, she responded and demonstrated understanding of the context. Michael threw the ball, and Pearl skillfully caught it, pushing it with her nose. But instead of returning the ball to the boat, as she had done in previous experiments, the dolphin swam farther away and passed it to another member of her group. "She's teaching others," Michael said excitedly. "Look how she's demonstrating the game to them." The interns watched in fascination as the dolphins passed the ball to each other, sometimes tossing it high above the water, demonstrating an amazing level of coordination and cooperation. The next part of the experiment was even more complex. They played a new sound signal, one that Pearl had never heard before. According to their hypothesis, the dolphin should show curiosity about the unfamiliar sound. Pearl stopped playing and approached the boat, tilting her head in such a way that one eye was directed straight at Michael. She released a jet of air from her blowhole and produced a series of sounds that the recording equipment clearly captured. "She's asking what it means," Michael said quietly, not taking his eyes off the dolphin. He took out a new object, a red ring made of floating material, and showed it to Pearl, simultaneously repeating the new sound through the audio system. The dolphin watched carefully, then swam a bit backward, as if contemplating the information. Everyone on board held their breath. This was a key moment in the experiment, Could the dolphin understand that the new sound meant a new object? Give her time, Michael whispered, as Pearl seemed to lose interest and began swimming in circles with the other dolphins. But then she suddenly returned to the boat and produced a series of sounds that very much resembled the new signal, though with certain variations. Michael nodded to Amanda, who threw the red ring into the water. Pearl grabbed it, swam a full circle around the boat, and then, to everyone's surprise, brought it right to Michael, raising her head above the water as if offering him to take the ring back. "My God," whispered Jenny, recording everything in the observation journal. "It's like she's saying, 'I understood your word and I'm showing you this.'" Michael carefully took the ring from her mouth, feeling his heart fill with awe. He had worked with marine mammals for most of his life, but had never felt such a deep connection. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked, unable to hide his excitement. She's not just associating a sound with an object. She understands that this is a process of communication, an exchange of information. The experiment continued for several more hours, during which Pearl demonstrated increasingly complex responses to their signals. By the end of the day, the team had collected an unprecedented amount of data on dolphins' communicative abilities. When they began packing up the equipment, preparing to return to shore, Pearl remained near the boat, as if unwilling to end the interaction. "We'll come back tomorrow," Michael said to her, though he understood the dolphin couldn't understand his words. But perhaps she understood his tone and intention. Pearl produced another series of sounds, emerged from the water high enough to look directly at him, and then gracefully dove, slapping her tail on the surface of the water as if to say goodbye. Returning to shore, Michael stood at the bow of the boat, looking at the bay, which was now safe after the closure of Collins's illegal operations. The fish population had begun to recover, and with it, all the ecosystem diversity of the waters. "What are you thinking about?" asked Amanda, joining him. "About how much we underestimate other forms of life," he replied. "We've been studying dolphins for many years, but never really try to understand them on their terms. We always evaluate intelligence relative to human standards. And now I think we have much to learn from them. Their social structure, cooperation, way of perceiving the world. Maybe we're not the only intelligent beings on this planet." Amanda nodded, looking at the horizon. "You know, I have an idea for the next phase of research. If Pearl can learn to recognize our signals, perhaps we can learn to recognize her natural language." "That's ambitious," Michael replied, but interest flashed in his eyes. "But I've been thinking about it. New artificial intelligence algorithms could help decipher patterns in their vocalizations. We could start creating something like a dictionary." "Exactly. And if we succeed, it will change everything," he finished. "Our understanding of consciousness, our responsibility toward other species, our conservation priorities." The shore was approaching. On the pier, a small group of people had already gathered, waiting for their return, colleagues from the research center, journalists, locals who were curious to hear about the experiment. Among them, Michael noticed Louisa and Jason. After the whole story with Sea Harvest, Jason had decided to return to his studies and was now interning at their center, combining work with marine mammals and studying to become a marine biologist. Also in the crowd was the slender figure of Martinez. After the successful operation against Collins, she had been promoted and now headed the regional office of the Marine Resource Protection Service. Under her leadership, a number of new marine environment protection programs had been implemented, including enhanced monitoring of fishing activities. "Ready for the press conference?" Amanda asked as the boat approached the pier. "I never thought I'd have to talk about my work on national television," Michael laughed. Their research had attracted significant attention after the publication of the first results. Environmental organizations, scientific journals, even politicians, everyone wanted to learn more about the amazing dolphins of the bay and their ability to communicate. When they docked, Michael suddenly noticed movement in the water near the pier. One dolphin was following the boat almost to the shore, too close to the shallows, where dolphins usually didn't venture. "Pearl," he exhaled, recognizing her. The dolphin emerged above the surface, turned to Michael, and produced a sound that he had already learned to recognize, a special whistle that Pearl seemed to use only for him. "Look," pointed Jenny, one of the students. "What is she holding?" In the dolphin's mouth was a small object that she carefully released onto the water's surface. When the object floated closer to the pier, Michael leaned down and picked it up. It was a starfish, an unusually beautiful one, with bright blue tips on its rays. "A gift," Amanda said quietly, watching as Pearl again produced her special whistle and swam back to deeper waters, where the rest of her group was waiting. Michael carefully held the starfish, feeling incredible excitement. This wasn't part of the experiment, wasn't trained behavior. This was a gesture on the dolphin's own initiative. "It seems you have a very special friend, Dr. Forster," remarked Martinez, who had come down to the water to greet the researchers. "Yes," Michael nodded, carefully returning the starfish to the water after showing it to everyone present. "And this is just the beginning of our dialogue." Later that evening, after the press conference and numerous interviews, Michael returned to his favorite beach. The moon illuminated the water, creating a trembling path on the waves. In this place, half a year ago, he had first met Pearl, frightened, injured, entangled in a prohibited net. Today, she was free, healthy, and, as he now knew, incredibly intelligent. And somehow she had changed his own life, leading him out of the prison of fears and helping him find a new purpose. "Strange thing, life," said Amanda, joining him on the beach with 2 cups of coffee. "How one moment can change everything." "I've been thinking about it all day," Michael replied, accepting the cup. "If I hadn't decided to help an injured dolphin that morning, we would never have met. Collins would have continued his activities, and you would still be afraid of the sea," she finished. "Sometimes the most important decisions are the ones we make instinctively, or those that other creatures make for us," he smiled, remembering how Pearl had consciously chosen him that morning, swimming specifically to him for help. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sound of the waves. Tomorrow would be a new day of research, new discoveries, new steps toward understanding the amazing creatures with whom they shared the planet. "Pearl likes you, not me," Amanda suddenly remarked with a slight smile. "She never brings me gifts." "Maybe you just haven't earned a starfish yet," Michael joked. "Oh, I'm working on it," she laughed. "Next time I'll be more persuasive." In the distance, in the moonlight, they noticed a splash. A dolphin jumped high above the water and gracefully dove back. It was impossible to tell if it was Pearl, but Michael felt that it was. "You know what's most impressive?" he said after a pause. "Not just their intelligence, but their emotional depth. Pearl doesn't just understand us on a cognitive level. She feels a connection. And so do you." "Yes," he simply replied. "And so do I." He stood up, shaking the sand from his clothes. "Early start tomorrow. I want to check the recordings of today's vocalizations before going out to sea again." Amanda nodded, and they walked together to the parking area. Michael looked back at the bay one last time before getting into the car. The water was calm, glistening under the moonbeams. Somewhere out there, in the depths, Pearl and her family continued their lives that were now safer thanks to their efforts. And somewhere out there, in the future, lay new discoveries, new understandings, perhaps even a true dialogue between species. He got into the driver's seat with a feeling of deep satisfaction. His journey from fear to recovery, from loss to a new beginning, had been long. But now he felt whole again. Even more, he felt part of something greater. Pearl had taught him not only that the ocean could be his home again, but that true connection crosses the boundaries of species, languages, even worlds. In the dolphin's eyes, he had seen a reflection of his own soul, a seeker, a protector, an explorer. That day, many months ago, When he entered the water to free an entangled dolphin, Michael couldn't have known that he was actually freeing himself. That by saving Pearl, he was saving his own future. And now, returning to the same beach every morning, he knew he would always find her there, waiting for him, his friend, his guardian, his interspecies interlocutor. He smiled at this thought, started the car, and moved forward toward a new day, new discoveries, and the continuation of the most amazing conversation of his life.